In 1867, a ship left New York carrying 300 tons of ice. It sailed to Calcutta. The ice arrived intact, and the people who received it had never seen anything like it. Some of them were afraid to touch it. For most of human history, keeping food cold was not an option, not a challenge waiting for a solution. It simply was not a category of thought. You did not keep food cold. You found other ways. Or the food died. And sometimes, so did you. The history of food preservation is not a story about technology. It is a story about survival intelligence accumulated over 10,000 years by people who had no margin for error. A single failed harvest, a single spoiled stockpile, a single winter with nothing left in the ground. And you did not make it to spring. They developed methods so precise, so counterintuitive, and so effective that several of them still outperform refrigeration in specific conditions. Some are still in use today. Not out of nostalgia, out of results. The refrigerator entered American homes in meaningful numbers around 1940. That means everything before it is a different story entirely. And the story starts with something much older than salt, much older than fire, much older than any human intervention at all. Drying, the oldest preservation method on Earth. Not smoking, not salting, removing water. Because without moisture, bacteria cannot grow. The logic is that simple. The execution took thousands of years to perfect. Archaeological evidence from the Middle East shows humans sun-drying fish and meat at least 14,000 years ago. No tools, no fire, no infrastructure, just air, time, and the understanding that what came out the other side could last months. But the most advanced version of drying did not come from the desert. It came from the Andes. At altitudes above 3,000 meters, nights drop below freezing. Days are dry and brutal with sun. The Inca used this as a machine. They spread potatoes on the ground at night, let them freeze, walked on them in the morning to press out the moisture, left them to dry in the sun, repeated this for days. The result was chuño, freeze-dried potato, weighed almost nothing, stored for years. Sometimes decades. It fed armies. It fed cities. It fed an entire empire through droughts that should have ended it. No laboratory, no technology, just altitude, temperature, and a precise understanding of what water does to food when you take it away. Chuño is still made in the Andes today. Not because people lack refrigerators, because chuño works. And drying was just the beginning. Because somewhere along the way, humans discovered something that did more than remove water from food, something that could pull water out of flesh through raw chemistry. They found salt. Salt mines in Romania show evidence of human extraction dating back 8,000 years. The word salary comes from the Latin salarium. Roman soldiers were paid in salt, not as a metaphor, as currency, because salt did something nothing else could do at scale. It pulled water out of food through osmosis, replaced it with an environment so hostile to bacteria that spoilage became nearly impossible. A piece of meat buried in dry salt long enough stopped being perishable. It became something else entirely, something that could cross oceans. The global economy of the ancient and medieval world was quietly structured around this fact. The Hanseatic League, the merchant network that dominated northern European trade from the 13th to the 17th century, was built largely on salted herring. Portuguese bacalhau fed colonizers and enslaved people across 3 continents for 300 years. Cod pulled from the North Atlantic, packed in salt, shipped to places the fish had never been. Salt did not just preserve food. It determined which civilizations could project power across distance. An army that could carry salted meat marched further. A navy that could store salted fish stayed at sea longer. The ability to preserve food was the ability to move, and the ability to move was the ability to conquer. But salt had a limit. It changed the food. Heavily salted meat required hours of soaking before you could eat it. It was practical, it was not elegant. For elegance, humans turned to something they did not build, did not design, and did not understand for thousands of years. Something alive. Fermentation is the only preservation method that makes food more nutritious than it was before. Every other method takes something away. Drying removes texture, salting alters flavor, smoking adds compounds that carry their own risks. Fermentation does the opposite. It creates vitamins that were not there, breaks down compounds the human gut cannot handle alone, produces an acidic environment so hostile to harmful bacteria that the food becomes safer than the raw ingredient it started as. Humans did not invent it. They discovered it, repeatedly, independently, on every inhabited continent. The earliest chemical evidence of fermented beverages dates to 7000 BCE in Jiahu, China. Residue inside clay jars. Fermented dairy appears in the Sahara region around 5500 BCE. Sourdough in ancient Egypt around 1500 BCE. Fermented fish paste shows up in Southeast Asia and ancient Rome simultaneously. No contact between the two traditions. The same discovery, over and over, because the conditions for it exist everywhere food and wild microorganisms meet. Sauerkraut fed northern Europe through winters when nothing grew. Kimchi, documented as early as the 13th century, was buried underground in ceramic jars to last the entire Korean winter. Kefir gave Central Asian nomads a way to carry dairy across vast distances without it killing them. None of these were recipes, they were infrastructure. Biological technology developed without microscopes, without laboratories, without any understanding of what a microorganism was. The people making these foods did not know why they worked. They knew only that they did, and that without them, winter was not a season. It was a verdict. Before the last part, if you are still here, this channel was built for you. Not for casual clicks, for the kind of person who wants to understand how things actually worked before someone simplified the story. Subscribe. The next one will matter to you the same way this one did. Now, there is one method that almost never appears in food preservation histories, not because it was rare, because it was so obvious nobody thought to record it as technology. The root cellar. Dig 4 feet into the earth and temperature stabilizes. It stops following the seasons. In most temperate climates, it sits between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius year-round. Naturally, no energy, no maintenance, nothing beyond a shovel and an understanding of where to dig. The Romans used them. Medieval peasants built them under their homes. American settlers carved them into hillsides. Root vegetables placed underground stayed alive for months in a state of suspended biological activity. And then there was ice. Not mechanical ice. Ice cut from frozen lakes in winter, packed in sawdust, stored in insulated buildings designed to hold it through summer. By the early 1800s, a man named Frederick Tudor of Boston was shipping lake ice to India and Cuba. He built an empire on a simple bet. That cold, if you could trap it, could travel. The refrigerator was patented in 1913. Domestic adoption in the United States did not reach half of households until the mid-1940s. In large parts of the world, decades later than that, which means everyone alive today over the age of 80 grew up in a household where someone still thought about food the old way, not as a hobby, as a condition of being alive in February. That knowledge did not transfer. It took 10,000 years to accumulate. It moved from parent to child, season to season, failure to failure. It was never written down because it never needed to be. Everyone already knew. Then, in 2 generations, the chain broke. The refrigerator arrived, the root cellars flooded. The crocks of fermenting vegetables disappeared from kitchen corners, and the survival intelligence of 100 centuries became folklore. What replaced it is a system of extraordinary complexity and extraordinary fragility. The modern cold chain, the unbroken sequence of refrigeration from farm to truck to warehouse to store to home, consumes roughly 1% of the world's total energy production. Every link depends on the one before it. A failure of sufficient scale does not cause inconvenience. It causes the same problem a failed harvest caused in 1200 CE. The food dies, and the margin vanishes. The people who built Chonyo on Andean hillsides understood something simple. Preservation is not a backup plan. It is the plan. The primary relationship between a human population and its food is not abundance. It is time. How long can you make what you have last? We stopped asking, not because the answer changed, because the refrigerator made it possible to forget the question existed.